Imagine a world with no rules, no leaders, no laws, not even a concept of what you should or shouldn't do. For the vast majority of human history, this was reality. Our ancestors roamed a world governed by instinct, where every sunrise brought a new, unpredictable struggle for survival. The only goals were finding food, avoiding predators, and keeping your small group alive for one more day. It was a life of absolute freedom, but also of constant, terrifying uncertainty. But as human populations grew from small, scattered bands into larger, more complex tribes, a fundamental problem emerged. How do you manage dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of people living together? Simple cooperation, the kind that worked for a family hunting together, just wasn't enough anymore. The sheer chaos of everyone doing whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, became a threat to the group's very existence. Something had to change. This is the story of one of the most significant turning points in our species' journey. It is the moment we began to trade a little bit of our wild freedom for a new, powerful idea: control. This wasn't about a single strong man suddenly taking over. It was a slow organic process, born out of necessity. It started with the simple things. Maybe an elder who knew the best hunting grounds became the person everyone listened to. Maybe a tragic accident led to the first unwritten rule. Do you take food from another family's storage? These early traditions weren't laws enforced by police. They were agreements held together by trust and the shared goal of survival. Think of it like this. When a group is small, you can solve disputes. You know everyone, you trust them, and your shared history keeps things in check. But what happens when you have a village of 500 people? You can't know everyone. You need a system. You need recognized leaders to mediate conflicts, organize hunts to ensure everyone gets fed, and rituals to strengthen the bonds that hold the community together. These were the first building blocks of society. The control wasn't just about power. It was about creating predictability in a chaotic world. It was about building a framework of trust that extended beyond your immediate family. This new impulse to create order spread like wildfire. We see it in the first spiritual leaders who interpreted the will of the gods, setting moral guidelines for the community. We see it in the councils of elders who made decisions for the common good. And we see it in the rise of chief individuals who were given authority not just because they were strong, but because they could organize defenses, manage resources, and ensure the group's prosperity. This transition wasn't always smooth, and it certainly wasn't always fair, but it was effective. It allowed human societies to become larger, more stable, and more powerful than ever before. From these humble beginnings, simple rules spoken around a campfire, a respected elder's judgment, the entire architecture of our modern world was built. These early forms of control evolved into laws, governments, and complex social hierarchies. The village council became a parliament. The chieftain's authority became the foundation for kingdoms and empires. The unwritten rules became constitutions and legal codes. Every time you stop at a red light, pay taxes, or vote in an election, you are participating in a system of control whose roots stretch back thousands of years, to the moment our ancestors decided that order was a better path to survival than chaos. The story of humanity is, in many ways, the story of our relationship with control. We spent millennia building systems to manage ourselves, to create stability, and to achieve things we could never accomplish alone. It's an invisible force that has shaped our cities, our nations, and even our own identities. And understanding how it all began helps us understand the world we live in today. The first topic of discussion is life without order. Have you ever wondered what life was like before rules? I mean, really think about it. Before police, before governments, before even the idea of a king or a chief. What did human life look like in a world without order? Let's travel back in time, tens of thousands of years, to a state we can only describe as raw, wild, and incredibly uncertain. In this ancient world, there were no written laws, no formal leaders, no cities, no borders. The only law that truly mattered was survival. Early humans were nomads, living in small, tight-knit groups. They were constantly on the move, following the great herds of animals, the changing seasons, and the life-giving sources of water. Decisions weren't made in a council chamber. They were made on the spot, driven by immediate need. Where do we hunt today? Which direction do we travel tomorrow? Is that shadow in the distance a threat or food? There were no written punishments for doing wrong, no official ranks, no one with the authority to command others. So, how did anything get done? Well, influence was earned, not given. It was shaped by strength, by experience, and by the trust you could build in the heat of the moment. If you were a skilled hunter who consistently brought back food, people listened to you. If you were an elder who remembered where to find water during a drought, your opinion held weight. If you were useful, you were followed. If you weren't, you were simply ignored. This wasn't leadership as we know it today. These influential individuals couldn't force anyone to do anything. They couldn't pass a law or sentence a criminal. Their power was purely social, based on respect and proven ability. It was a fragile system, entirely dependent on the immediate context. In these early communities, cooperation was essential, but it was also incredibly delicate. People shared food, but not necessarily out of a deep moral belief in fairness. They shared because the person you feed today might be the one who saves your life tomorrow. It was a pragmatic, instinctive form of teamwork, where everyone's survival depended on the group. But what happened when things went wrong? Conflicts were common. They erupted over food, over tools, over potential mates, or over prime territory. And how were they resolved? There were no courts, no judges. Disputes were often settled through raw dominista, strongest person won. Sometimes, a persuasive talker could calm things down. Other times, if the disagreement was too intense, the group would simply split. One part would go one way, the other would go another. There was no larger system, no overarching authority to prevent the same conflicts from happening over and over again. Imagine trying to live like that. Every single rule, every agreement, every piece of social knowledge existed only in memory. Nothing was permanent. Every promise relied entirely on personal trust, and that trust could shatter in an instant. It was a world where order was a temporary, fleeting thing, and chaos was always just one bad hunt or one heated argument away. But let's be clear, this wasn't complete anarchy. Even without formal structures, early humans followed natural patterns of behavior. There was a deep-seated respect for elders, not because of a law, but because their memories were a living library of survival knowledge. They remembered past dangers, forgotten trails, and ancient wisdom. Similarly, skilled hunters were listened to intently because people's lives literally depended on their expertise. These weren't commanders, but their influence was undeniable. Still, this influence had its limits. As I mentioned, if a major disagreement arose, the simplest solution was often for the group to fracture. People would just walk away. This method worked perfectly fine when human populations were small and the world was vast and full of resources. If you didn't like the people you were with, you could take your chances and find a new territory. But this fragile balance couldn't last forever. Something was changing. Over thousands of years, human intelligence began to blossom. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were innovating. Better stone tools led to more efficient hunting and butchering. The mastery of fire created a safe, warm, central point for the group to gather, share food, and communicate. And with this newfound safety and stability, our language and social bonds grew more complex. Slowly but surely, the small, wandering bands began to grow into larger groups. And with that growth came a set of problems that early humans had never encountered before. More people meant more opinions, more personalities, and more potential for friction. More mouths to feed meant more pressure on the local environment and its resources. More daily interactions meant more opportunities for conflict to spark. The old way of doing things relying on instinct, temporary leaders, and the option to just walk away was starting to crumble under the weight of this new complexity. It was no longer enough. The simple, raw world of instinct and immediate need was reaching its breaking point. This was the first major crack in the world of chaos. Unknowingly, humanity was standing at a monumental crossroads. We were approaching a turning point where survival would no longer depend solely on individual skill or the strength of a small band. It would depend on something entirely new, something revolutionary. It would depend on order. And this order wouldn't just appear naturally from the ether. It would have to be invented. It would have to be built piece by piece, trial by error, over generations. The story of humanity was about to enter its next chapter. The difficult, messy, and absolutely essential journey of creating structure out of chaos. The very foundations of our modern world were about to be laid. The second topic of discussion is growing groups, growing problems. Have you ever wondered how we went from small bands of hunter-gatherers to the massive, complex societies we live in today? The story isn't just about bigger farms or better tools. It's about a fundamental human crisis. How do we live together without destroying ourselves? Imagine a small group of 20 people. Everyone knows each other. Problems are solved sharing is simple. But what happens when that group grows to 50? Or 100? Suddenly, the old ways don't work anymore. As human groups got larger, they faced a paradox. More people meant more hunters, better defense against predators, and a higher chance of survival. But it also meant more mouths to feed, more personalities clashing, and more disagreements. Personal disputes that were once minor could now spiral out of control, threatening the entire community. Food wasn't always shared fairly. Tensions simmered. For the first time, humanity stared into a dangerous abyss. How do we manage this growing chaos? In smaller groups, if you had a serious conflict, you could just leave, walk away, join another group. But as people started settling down in one place near a river with abundant fish, in a valley with fertile soil, or a cave that offered perfect shelter, walking away became a much harder choice. This land was valuable. This territory was home. Stability started to matter more than ever. Without clear rules, things got messy. The strongest or most aggressive individuals started taking more than their share. Arguments that might have been settled with words now ended in violence. A single act of revenge could trigger a devastating cycle, pulling families and friends into a conflict that could tear the group apart. This internal chaos was just as dangerous as any predator lurking in the dark. Early humans began to understand a crucial lesson. Absolute, unchecked freedom was a threat to their survival. Total independence, where everyone just did whatever they wanted, was weakening the group from the inside. Something had to change. The very first step was simple. They talked. People gathered and started discussing shared expectations. Who's responsible for hunting today? Who gathers berries and roots? Who keeps an eye on the children while others are away? Who stands guard at night? These weren't laws written in stone. They were verbal agreements, simple understandings designed to keep the peace and make life predictable. But as we all know, agreements only work if people respect them. So, what happens when someone breaks the understanding? This is where tradition and memory came into play. Behaviors that worked well were repeated. Over time, these repeated actions became customs, and those customs slowly hardened into unspoken rules. Now, breaking a rule had real consequences. There were no police or courts. Of course, the punishment was social. If you broke the trust of the group, you'd face disapproval. People would stop sharing with you. They'd stop talking to you. In the most extreme cases, you could be excluded entirely. And for an early human, being cast out of the group was often a death sentence. This social pressure was an incredibly powerful tool for maintaining order. Around the same time, something else fascinating began to happen. Certain individuals started to stand out. Not necessarily the strongest hunter or the fiercest warrior, but the person who was good at calming disputes. The one who could clearly explain a complex decision. The wise elder who could think ahead and anticipate problems. These people were natural mediators, and they helped the group navigate tough times, and the group remembered their contributions. Over time, this influence began to solidify into a kind of informal authority. It wasn't an official title, not yet, but when these individuals spoke, others listened. Their opinions carried more weight. Their words could shape the group's decisions. Slowly, almost without realizing it, the first glimmers of leadership began to form. This leadership wasn't born from force or domination, but from sheer necessity. The group needed someone to guide them through the growing complexity of their lives. This was a monumental shift in human history. The realization that chaos was not inevitable, that order could be created, that human behavior could be guided and shaped for the good of the community. This move from reacting to chaos to actively creating structure was a survival strategy, and it worked. Once our ancestors learned that they could design their own social worlds, there was no going back. This fundamental discovery that we can create rules, leadership, and shared customs was the seed from which everything else grew. It paved the way for more complex belief systems, the first chiefs and councils, and eventually the very foundations of civilization itself. The next time you see a law, a government, or a social custom, remember its ancient origins. A simple, desperate attempt by our ancestors to figure out how to live together. The third topic of discussion is the rise of shared rules. Have you ever wondered why we live by rules? Traffic lights, laws, even waiting in line. It all seems so normal. But where did this idea of following rules even come from? To find the answer, we have to go way back, long before written laws or organized governments, to a time when our ancestors faced a world of constant chaos and danger. Imagine a small group of early humans, living day to day, struggling to find food, avoid predators, and simply survive. In this world, the biggest, strongest person could take whatever they wanted. There were no police, no courts, just raw power. This might sound like total freedom, but it was actually a recipe for disaster. Constant conflict within the group, fighting over food, and a lack of trust made everyone weaker and more vulnerable. Freedom without any boundaries wasn't freedom at all. It was a threat to their very survival. Faced with this chaos, our ancestors did something revolutionary. They started to agree on limits. This wasn't because they suddenly loved being told what to do. It was a practical necessity. They realized that for the group to survive, individuals had to give up a little bit of their absolute freedom. These first rules were incredibly simple, born from everyday needs. Who gets to eat first after a hunt? Who has the responsibility to hunt? And who stays behind to protect the camp? If two people have a dispute, who helps settle it? These weren't written down on stone tablets. There were no formal legal documents. Instead, these rules lived in the collective memory of the group. They were passed down through stories told around the campfire, through warnings from elders, and through the simple act of watching and learning. A child learned the rules by observing the adults. A newcomer learned by paying close attention to how everyone else behaved. Slowly but surely, these patterns of behavior hardened into firm expectations. And these expectations, this shared understanding of how things should be, started to hold real power. The most profound effect of these early rules was that they reduced uncertainty. Life was still dangerous, but within the group, things started to become predictable. You knew what was expected of you, and you knew what you could expect from others. This dramatically cut down on the constant internal conflicts that had weakened them. For the first time, humans were creating a stable social environment. It was a massive leap forward, a new tool for survival that was just as important as the discovery of fire or the invention of the spear. But what happens when someone decides to ignore a rule? An agreement is only as strong as the willingness of people to follow it. If a strong hunter decided he didn't want to share his kill, what could anyone do? This is where a new concept emerged. Collective enforcement. The group itself became the judge and jury. If you broke the rules, the consequences weren't a fine or a prison sentence. The punishment was social. You might face the anger of the group, a deep sense of shame, or, in the most serious cases, exclusion. Being cast out of the group was practically a death sentence. Alone, you lost the protection of the others. You lost access to shared food and resources, and your chances of surviving in a harsh world plummeted. The fear of social isolation became a powerful motivator. Social pressure, the weight of the community's disapproval, began to replace the need for physical force. This was a critical shift. Rules were no longer just suggestions. They were becoming obligations that you ignored at your peril. Alongside this social pressure, another powerful tool emerged to reinforce the rules. Ritual. Think of it as giving rules a physical form. Repeated actions, ceremonies, and gatherings weren't just about tradition. They were about embedding the rules into the very fabric of daily life. A ceremony to honor a successful hunt wasn't just a party. It reinforced the rules about sharing and cooperation. A ritual to settle a dispute wasn't just a conversation. It was a public demonstration of the group's commitment to fairness. These repeated shared experiences gave the abstract rules a tangible weight and meaning. Belief systems also began to intertwine with rules, making them even more powerful. What if the rules didn't just come from the group, but from a higher power? What if they were handed down by the ancestors, dictated by the spirits of the forest, or woven into the fabric of nature itself? Suddenly, breaking a rule wasn't just a social mistake. It was a spiritual transgression. It could bring bad luck, anger the gods, or endanger the entire community. This link between rules and belief added a layer of fear and reverence, strengthening obedience and fostering a deeper sense of unity. For the first time in history, humans were learning to control their own behavior on a large scale, not through constant violence, but through shared understanding and mutual agreement. This was the foundation of society. Rules created structure. Structure provided stability, and stability allowed groups to grow, to innovate, and to flourish. But this new system created a new problem. As rules became more complex, they needed to be managed. Someone had to remember the specific details of each rule. Someone had to interpret them and explain them to the next generation. And, most importantly, someone had to have the authority to decide when a rule had been broken and what the consequences should be. This responsibility didn't fall on everyone equally. It began to concentrate in the hands of a select few. Perhaps it was the elders, who held the group's history in their memories. Or maybe it was the shamans, who was seen as the connection to the spiritual world where the rules originated. Or it could have been the most respected hunters, or leaders, whose judgment everyone trusted. This was the very beginning of specialized roles in society. The first hint of leadership and authority. The simple, egalitarian world of shared rules was slowly, but inevitably, starting to build the hierarchies that would define human civilization for millennia to come. So, the next time you stop at a red light or wait your turn in the line, remember that you're participating in a tradition that is tens of thousands of years old. You are honoring that ancient, revolutionary decision our ancestors made to trade a little bit of personal freedom for the immense power of cooperation and order. It's a trade that allowed us to move from surviving to thriving, and it's the invisible architecture that holds our entire world together. The fourth topic of discussion is leaders emerge. Have you ever wondered where leaders came from? I mean, really, how did we go from small, equal groups to societies with chiefs, kings, and presidents? It's a fascinating story, and it didn't happen overnight. It all started with a simple, powerful idea: rules. As early humans started living in larger groups, they developed shared rules to survive. Don't steal food. Help with the hunt. These weren't written laws, just common understandings. But rules alone weren't enough. Human society needed something more, and that something was leadership. Now, when I say leaders, don't picture a king on a throne. The first leaders were nothing like that. They weren't rulers or tyrants. They were the problem solvers, the calm voices in a crisis, the experienced hands that guided the group. Imagine a dispute breaks out over a piece of meat. Who do you turn to? You'd probably look to the person who has settled arguments fairly before. Or what if a predator is spotted near the camp? Everyone's eyes would turn to the hunter who always stays calm and knows what to do. When the seasons changed and it was time to move, people would follow the person who had successfully found new, better lands in the past. This is how leadership began quietly, naturally, and without any grand announcement. Early leaders didn't demand obedience. They earned it, one good decision at a time. Their authority wasn't based on force or fear. It was built entirely on trust. They were the ones who knew the best hunting grounds, the right time to harvest plants, and, crucially, how to maintain peace within the community. Their words carried weight because they had proven themselves reliable. This was a revolutionary shift in human history. For the first time, a single person's voice could guide the actions of many. This wasn't about control, it was about coordination. A trusted leader could unite the group for a big hunt or organize a collective effort to build a stronger shelter. This ability to coordinate was a huge survival advantage as human groups grew from a few dozen people to hundreds. This kind of informal leadership became even more essential. Think about the logistics. With more people, you have more resources to manage. Who decides how to distribute the food from a successful hunt to make sure everyone gets a share? Who organizes the defense of the camp if another group becomes hostile? And when someone inevitably breaks a rule, who decides on the fair punishment? Suddenly, these occasional problem solvers were becoming full-time managers. The role of a leader started to solidify. It wasn't just about giving advice anymore. It was about making decisions that affected the entire community. Leadership was transitioning from simple influence into real authority. But it's important to remember that this authority was still very fragile. It was conditional. An early leader could persuade and guide, but they couldn't rule with an iron fist. If a leader made a series of bad decisions, the hunt failed repeatedly, or if their advice led the group into danger, people would simply stop listening. They might follow someone else, or the group might even split apart. Leadership was a performance, and you were only as good as your last success. Even so, a fundamental change had already taken place. The idea of a leader, a central figure, was now embedded in the social fabric. Leaders became symbols of order and stability in a very uncertain and dangerous world. Their presence helped to reduce internal chaos and allowed for much greater cooperation. With a leader, a group could act as a single, coordinated unit, which was far more effective than a collection of individuals. Over many generations, these informal leadership roles started to become more defined and formal. Different cultures developed different names for them: elders, chiefs, council heads. These weren't just random titles. They represented specific responsibilities and a recognized authority. This evolution was slow, shaped by the unique needs and challenges each group faced. A society in a harsh desert might prioritize a leader who was skilled at finding water, while a group in a fertile valley might value someone who understood agriculture. But with this new, defined leadership came an unavoidable consequence: hierarchy. For the first time, not everyone in the group was equal. Some people's opinions mattered more. Some individuals had the power to make decisions that affected everyone else. On one hand, this created incredible efficiency. Decisions could be made quickly, and large-scale projects could be organized effectively. But on the other hand, it introduced social inequality. And where there's inequality, power isn't far behind. As leaders gained more control over important decisions, they naturally gained influence over everything else. The distribution of resources, the enforcement of rules, and the protection of the group. What started as gentle guidance was slowly but surely turning into control. So, how did societies make this new power structure feel right and permanent? They turned to something we've discussed before: belief. They created stories and traditions to justify why certain people should lead. Leaders weren't just wise or experienced anymore. They were chosen by the ancestors, blessed by the spirits, or destined by fate to rule. This was a brilliant move. By linking leadership to the supernatural or to sacred tradition, their authority became natural, legitimate, and much harder to question. You weren't just disobeying a person. You were defying the will of the gods or the wisdom of your ancestors. This made power far more stable and secure. This is the moment when everything truly changed. The process started with simple survival guidance, but it evolved into a system of governance. When you combine leadership with rules, hierarchy, and a belief system to back it all up, you get the blueprint for all future complex societies. Humanity had crossed a threshold from which there was no turning back. The age of pure, unstructured, chaotic equality was over. A new era had dawned, the age of order, hierarchy, and control, and the world would never be the same again. The fifth topic of discussion is control through belief. Have you ever wondered why we follow rules, even when no one is watching? It's a question that goes back to the very beginning of human society. As our ancestors formed the first groups, they faced a huge problem. How do you make sure everyone sticks to the plan, not just for a day, but for generations? Early leaders and rules were a good start, but they were fragile. People could forget the rules. They could challenge the leader. Authority could crumble. To build something that would last, early societies needed a tool more powerful than memory or force. They found it in belief. This was a game changer. Belief systems became one of the most powerful inventions in human history. Think about it. When you connect a simple rule, like sharing food, to something much bigger, the will of the ancestors, the spirits of the forest, or powerful, unseen gods, it's no longer just a suggestion. It becomes a sacred duty. Disobeying isn't just rude, it's dangerous. Early humans lived in a world filled with mystery and fear. Where did the lightning come from? Why did the rains fail? What happens after we die? These were terrifying, unanswerable questions. Belief provided the answers. It brought a sense of order to the chaos of the natural world, and clever leaders quickly realized that this order could be used to strengthen their own. Suddenly, rules weren't just made up by the person in charge. They were timeless traditions, handed down from the first ancestors. They were the natural laws of the universe itself. They were sacred. Breaking a rule wasn't just a social mistake. It was an act against nature, against the spirits, against the very fabric of reality. This shifted control from something external to something internal. You didn't follow the rule because you were scared of the chief. You followed it because you were scared of the consequences from the spirit world. To make these beliefs feel real and immediate, societies developed rituals. These weren't just random ceremonies. They were powerful tools for social engineering. Gathering around a fire to tell stories of the creation, making offerings to unseen forces, painting symbols on cave walls, all these actions made abstract beliefs tangible and emotional. Rituals created a shared experience. They burned the rules and their divine justifications into the collective memory of the group. People didn't just know the rules. They felt them in their bones. This new system also transformed the nature of leadership. Leaders weren't just the strongest hunters or the wisest decision-makers anymore. They became the guardians of belief. Elders were the ones who remembered and interpreted the ancient traditions. Shamans and priests were the intermediaries, the ones who could speak to the spirits or gods. Chiefs were the protectors of sacred customs. This closeness to the divine gave leaders an entirely new kind of authority. Their power no longer seemed to come from other people, but from a higher source. How can you argue with a leader who is said to speak for the ancestors? How can you question a decision that is presented as the will of a god? The line between human leadership and the supernatural world blurred, making power seem untouchable, absolute, and legitimate. Belief also had another incredible effect. It unified people on a massive scale. When a group of people shares the same story about where they came from, why the world is the way it is, and what their purpose is, they develop a powerful sense of shared identity. It creates a we. Internal conflicts decrease because everyone is operating from the same moral playbook. Cooperation increases because everyone is working towards the same sacred goals. This unity was the glue that allowed small family bands to grow into large tribes, and eventually into sprawling civilizations. Without a shared belief system, it is hard to imagine how thousands of strangers could ever trust each other enough to build a city. But there was a dark side to this powerful tool. Belief also became the ultimate justification for inequality. If a leader's family was chosen by the gods centuries ago, who are you to question their right to rule? Their privilege isn't just an accident of birth, it's a divine mandate. This is how temporary leadership hardened into permanent hierarchies. Power became something you could inherit, like property. Social classes, from kings and priests down to commoners and slaves, were seen not as human creations, but as part of the natural, God-given order of the world. Belief made control stable, but it also locked people into their place. Looking back, this was a profound turning point for our species. For the first time, humans weren't just controlling each other's actions, they were shaping each other's thoughts. They were building the very architecture of reality inside people's minds. Belief transformed social control from something that had to be constantly enforced from the outside into something that was willingly accepted from the inside. And once people truly believed in the order they were a part of, they were willing to do anything to build it, defend it, and expand it. From building pyramids to fighting wars, belief gave human societies the motivation and cohesion to achieve things on a scale never before imagined. It's a force that has built empires and torn them down, and it continues to shape our world in countless ways today. The next time you follow a rule, ask yourself, is it just a rule, or is it part of a deeper belief you hold? The answer might tell you more than you think about the ancient forces that still govern our lives. The sixth topic of discussion is from villages to cities. Have you ever wondered how we went from small, wandering groups to massive, sprawling cities? What was the one big change that made everything else possible? It was belief in the leadership it created that led us to do something truly radical. We stopped moving. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans were nomads, following the seasons and the herds. Our world was fluid, constantly changing. But then, something shifted. We chose a spot. We settled down. This was the birth of the village. These first settlements popped up in the most logical places, near rivers for water, on fertile land for crops, and along natural paths that would soon become trade routes. The relentless hunt for food gave way to the patient work of farming. Life wasn't about the next kill anymore, it was about the next harvest. With settlement came something entirely new. The home, not just a temporary shelter, but a permanent place. And with permanent homes came the idea of property. This piece of land is mine. These tools are mine. This harvest is mine. Suddenly, territory mattered in a way it never had before. Life became fixed, rooted to a single spot on the earth. But this new way of life wasn't a utopia. Villages created a whole new set of problems our ancestors had never faced. More people living close together meant more waste piling up. It meant diseases could spread like wildfire. It meant more disputes over land, resources, and relationships. And for the first time, significant inequality started to emerge. Some families had better land, bigger harvests, more possessions. The nomadic life, for all its dangers, was often more egalitarian. Survival was no longer just about tracking animals or finding edible plants. It was about management. It was about organizing people. Control became essential. The simple, informal rules that worked for a small, mobile group were no longer enough. Rules had to expand, covering everything from who got how much water to how to settle a fight between neighbors. Leaders, who once might have just been the best hunters or the wisest elders, now had far more responsibility. They had to organize food storage to prevent famine, plan defenses against outsiders, and figure out how to divide labor. In this new world, everyone had a role. You were a farmer, a builder, a weaver, a potter. And this wasn't really a choice. It was a necessity. The survival of the entire village depended on this specialization. This intricate web of roles and responsibilities was the engine that allowed villages to grow into towns, and eventually, for towns to swell into the first cities. The city was an organism of a completely different scale, and it was absolutely impossible without a much higher level of control. Walls were built, not just to keep wild animals out, but to protect the accumulated resources, the grain, the goods, the people themselves. Guards patrolled the streets to enforce order. Councils were formed to make decisions for thousands. Laws, once just spoken traditions, were now formally written down. Punishment became structured and impersonal. Justice was no longer a negotiation between families. It was a verdict delivered by the state. Leadership transformed yet again. A city leader wasn't just a guide or a respected elder. They were an administrator, a bureaucrat. They managed vast systems of labor, land distribution, trade networks, and justice. Authority, which had been spread throughout the community, was now centralized in the hands of a few. The social pyramids deepened dramatically. A clear hierarchy took shape. At the bottom were the farmers, whose sweat and toil fed the entire city. Above them were the soldiers who protected it, and the craftsmen who built and supplied it. And at the very top, the leaders who ruled it all. What held this complex, and often unequal, system together? Belief. Belief was the glue of the city. Grand temples rose at the heart of these urban centers. Physical monuments to the gods who supposedly watched over them. Elaborate rituals and public ceremonies brought thousands of people together, creating a shared identity and a sense of unity. Leaders didn't just rule by force. They ruled in the name of the gods, or by the sanctity of tradition, or as the embodiment of destiny. Control became sacred. To challenge the ruler was to challenge the divine order itself. This new, controlled environment of the city had incredible benefits. It allowed for specialization on a scale never seen before. People could dedicate their entire lives to philosophy, art, science, or engineering. This led to an explosion of innovation and culture. Writing emerged, not for poetry, but for the practical needs of recording laws, tracking trade, and counting grain. We started measuring time with calendars and clocks. We started recording our own story. History began. But this incredible progress came at a cost. Cities locked humans into rigid systems. For the first time in our history, leaving was no longer a simple option. Where would you go? How would you survive without the network of the city? The freedom of the open plains was traded for the security of the city walls. Individual independence was swapped for collective stability. Humanity had made a grand bargain. We traded chaos for control. And by all measures, the trade worked. Cities didn't just survive, they thrived. They became the hearts of civilizations. Civilizations grew into empires. The concept of control, which began as a few simple rules around a campfire, expanded to govern vast territories. Millions of people, and countless generations. The human world was no longer wild. It was organized, it was managed, and it was here to stay. The world we live in today, a world of nations, laws, and global networks, is the direct descendant of that momentous decision to stop wandering and build a home. The seventh and final topic of discussion is the foundation of civilization. When did we stop being just another animal and start becoming us? It wasn't just about fire or tools. It was the moment we built the first city, followed the first leader, and obeyed the first rule. That's when everything changed. Humanity crossed a line it could never uncross. Our lives were no longer shaped just by the wild rhythms of nature. They were now shaped by something we created. Systems. Think about it. Think about it. What started as simple decisions for survival, like where to find food or how to stay safe, slowly evolved into what we call civilization. Those unwritten rules, once passed down through stories and memory, were eventually carved into stone and written on scrolls. Leadership, which once relied purely on the trust and respect you earned from your small tribe, was now backed by powerful institutions, armies, and laws. The beliefs that united a handful of families around a campfire began to unite entire populations under a single banner, a single god, or a single idea. Control, once temporary and fluid, became permanent. And this foundation of control, this new order, allowed human societies to grow in ways that were previously unimaginable. With order came stability, and with stability, something incredible was unlocked. Innovation. For the first time, we could truly plan for the future. We could store massive amounts of food, which meant we no longer had to live we could build breathtaking monuments that reached for the sky, create art that captured our deepest emotions, develop science to understand the universe, and record our own history so that future generations would know who we were. Even time itself became structured. We measured it, organized it, and gave it meaning. The past, present, and future became real concepts. Civilization wasn't built on brute strength alone. It was built on control. The control of our own behavior, the control of resources like land and water, and the control of our shared beliefs. Now, when we hear the word control, it often sounds negative, like something that limits us. But this control also did something miraculous. It created cooperation on a scale never seen before in the natural world. Suddenly, millions of people who were complete strangers to one another could live together, work together, and identify with each other under the same set of rules and a shared identity. This was humanity's greatest achievement, but it was also our greatest risk. Because wherever there is control, there is power. As these early civilizations expanded, the leaders at the top gained immense authority. The rules they made became more and more complex, weaving a web of laws that governed every aspect of life. Social hierarchies, which may have started as simple divisions of labor, hardened into rigid class systems. Inequality grew. Some people benefited enormously from this new order, living lives of comfort and privilege. Others found themselves trapped by it, their lives dictated by forces far beyond their influence. Empires rose on these foundations of control. They ruled through professional armies, intricate legal codes, systematic taxes, and powerful state-sponsored beliefs. Borders were drawn on maps, separating us from them. Nations were born. It is mind-blowing when you realize that the systems created thousands of years ago still shape every single day of our lives. Our governments, our legal systems, the social rules we follow without even thinking. Our schools, our banks, all of them, trace their roots back to those early moments when humans chose order over chaos. And yet, that choice was never the end of the story. The struggle never ended. Throughout all of history, we have constantly questioned control. Who should have the right to rule? How much power is too much? At what point does order turn into oppression? These are the questions that have fueled revolutions, sparked debates, and driven progress. They are questions that have echoed from the flickering light of ancient campfires all the way to the neon glow of our modern cities. Civilization is not a static monument. It's a living, breathing organism. It evolves, rules change, leaders and empires fall, beliefs shift and transform. But that foundation, the idea of an organized society, we still live inside the systems our ancestors created, even if we've remodeled the house 1,000 times. Every law we follow, every authority we accept, every institution we depend on, they all exist because those early humans realized something absolutely essential. Without some form of control, society collapses into chaos. But they also learned a harder lesson, one we are still learning today. Without wisdom, justice, and empathy, that same control can destroy everything it was meant to protect. The epic story of humanity isn't just a story about power and conquest. It's the story of learning how to manage that power. It's a journey from chaos to control, and it's a journey that defines who we are. And the most exciting part, it is still unfolding, right here, right now, with every choice we make. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through history interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next exploration. See you next time.